Welcome back to the Peruvian Waltz podcast. My name is Brian Birdie, and I'm joining you here again from behind the camera off. Like I said, if you guys have any fix for this, let me know. I appear to be the only person on the planet with this problem. I can't find any solution. But anyways, enough about that. You've heard my problems. I'm joined here by only Peter Galindo. Unfortunately, Viz and Diego are out having Thanksgiving. You know, the Americans have Thanksgiving on the wrong date. So, yeah. How are you, Peter?
I am well, and you are most certainly correct. The time for Thanksgiving is the second weekend of October, not this nearly the end of November nonsense that the Americans do.
Absolutely. And as for myself, I'm fine. I'm just really annoyed about my camera, but overall, I'm perfectly fine. I should mention, and I don't want to ramble on too long, but I should mention that my camera, it's not a problem with the camera itself. It's a problem with Google Hangouts because neither one of my cameras work. So I don't know what's going on. And it works on OBS and it works on my PC, so it's not that. But anyways, so let's talk about these November friendlies. The last part we did it right before the friendly against Ecuador. And yeah, we lost both games, which it's been a while since we've lost 2 games in a row. Well, no, not really. We've lost 2 games in a row in September. Sorry about that, but
and at the World Cup too.
That's in the World Cup, but that's besides the point. I made a mistake there. But anyways, at least to be fair, in the World Cup and against it, well, I'm not trying to disrespect Ecuador and Costa Rica, but I will say that before the World Cup, these are 2 teams we would have beaten. So it's clearly a transitional moment for Peru. So it's not going to be easy, but I'd say don't panic yet. So what do you think? What do you think? Just a brief opinion before we go more in depth, Peter, about these 2 friendlies. What do you think?
I mean, the first game was obviously a disaster. I think I wrote in my article for the website that I thought it was the worst performance of the Gareca era. When you consider the strength of the opponent, where it was played, and just the general lack of quality on the pitch, especially in the final third, then I think it has to be considered one of the worst, if not the worst. Obviously, a massive improvement against Costa Rica. I mean, when you go from only having 3 shots to 17 shots and having 8 of them hit the target, that's a pretty substantial improvement, it must be said. So at least there was some sort of a reaction, especially for the fans in Arequipa who don't always get to see the national team. At least they gave them a good game, an entertaining match. And I have to say, if I wasn't Peruvian or Costa Rican, I would be enthralled by that game. And it's also back-to-back matches that Costa Rica were involved in that finished 3-2. So, I guess if you want a good match, then watch Costa Rica. But as we'll get into, I'm sure, there were some positives to take away, maybe 1 or 2 negatives, but I think generally speaking, a lot to build on, at least from the Costa Rica game.
Now, there's definitely a lot more negatives than 1 or 2. I'm going to just disagree with you on that. But I do agree that in the second game, there were more positives than the first. It's a friendly, and the friendlies, it's really just to build on. Some people are taking this way too seriously. And, yeah, it's not good that we're losing. I feel like international friendlies are more important than club friendlies. But I think there's a bit of an overreaction of this. Because you remember before the Copa America in 2015, Chile actually lost a lot of friendlies. I don't remember when they lost to Jamaica at home, but they did at one point, and they ended up winning the tournament twice in a row. So regardless of which Copa America was that they played Jamaica beforehand, they ended up winning it. That's the point. So I don't think it's a time to panic. I think that it's an experimental moment, and the full matches are to be considered. Now, what I will say is concerning is some of these players' performances. It's been very below average, especially for the starters. And I have a very controversial opinion on it later. I'm sure Peter knows what that is, but basically, like I said, this is a transitional moment. We're trying to get past Paulo Guerrero and Muro Rodriguez. I actually do think Paulo Guerrero, if he might be able to play the Copa America 2016, unless the ban extends further, which knowing FIFA, it might.
It won't. I highly doubt it will, but anyways.
I thought the same thing with Angulo as well, but it did for like 4 years.
Yeah, good point.
They're very strict with doping laws in this.
Doping, air quotes.
Yeah, they're very strict with the doping laws in this sport, unfortunately. So it's a problem. But I do hope Paulo Guerrero can play that one last tournament. extend his goal tally further. I feel like he has one more tournament in him before he retires. I don't think he'll be in place for the next national team discussion, or the next national team, the next qualifier. Sorry, but now one thing I take out from these friendlies is that Raul Ruiz, I've given him so many chances, but I've decided that the problem is his height, because we tried playing around him, no chances were created, and we tried long balling it to him only for a taller defender to beat him. I have faith in Ruiz. I think he's a great player, but I think we should be proud of him at club level, because at international level, at least with Gareca, he's not getting it done. So I think that for now, at least Guerrero is better, which he might be by March. Is that correct, Peter?
By April, early April.
Okay, so next month, next month, the next qualifying session, it won't be that, but I think Ivan Bulos might be the man for now, at least. I mean, Ivan Bulos is very average, and even though he's doing well, Municipal way back, I think it's a bit too premature to call him out for it. I still think he's a bit of an average player. He's nowhere near Guerrero, but he's the one that fits the style the most, I think. He's gotten a bit better at ball. At least like he was good before his injury. I don't think he was anything outstanding, but he was good. I think he was good before his injury. And most Portuguese people, the Portuguese analysts seem to like him a bit. So I do think that it was a decent signing, and he just got a bit unfortunate. And the Municipal has been really good. But by March, I guess we'll see a little bit, because you have the 1 month break for the South American club level. And I think that Ivan Bulos for now is the man. Jefferson Farfan as well. He's better as a 9 than as a 10 for sure. I think there's not much people who will disagree with that by now, because he's not dynamic enough as a 10. And as a 9, he showed that he's a lot better. As a 9, we had him as a 9 when Guerrero was out with suspension before the World Cup, and he was doing quite well. I mean, sure, he won't. He's taller than Ruiz, but he's. I think he's better at heading than Ruiz is. He's a bit short. He's a bit shorter than Guerrero. He's not that tall either, but I think he's a bit better at heading. He scored a lot of headed goals at Lokomotiv Moscow. So I don't know the exact number, but he scored quite a bit.
There were a few, yes.
Yeah. So his last goal in the Champions League was a header.
Yes.
Just to give an idea. And so I think that's an important trait that Farfan has, even if he's not the tallest. If he can beat his defender, then his heading ability won't go to waste. So I think him as a 9 or Bulos, one of those two. Bulos is younger, so maybe he's the one for the future. But I think right now we should focus on the Copa America, which Farfan and Guerrero have one last shot at it. So, yeah. And then there is Yotun, who is very hit and miss. Some games he's a fantastic. Other games he's just nothing. It does worry me a little bit, because he used to be so much more consistent, but now he's very hit and miss. And as for the defense, well, let's talk about the defense later, because we actually got a question on it. But Tapia and Aquino are going to rotate. I think Aquino had his worst game defensively the other day, and it was not very good from him. I still have faith in him because he's a fantastic player. Bad games happen so often, and Tapia really needs game time. He really does. So, what do you think of these? What do you think of the forwards and midfield, Peter, before we go on to attacking midfield and defense, which is a bit more complex?
Yes, before we go on to the Christian Benavente show. At least for me. Anyways, in terms of the Ruiz Bulos whole conundrum thing, look, genuinely, when I see Ruiz getting a clear-cut chance saved, or he misses it in general, it's like a punch to the stomach for me, because I want him so desperately to do well, because I backed him for so long. And when he doesn't, when he doesn't get the chances to fall, you kind of think to yourself, like, what else does he have to do here? I mean, is he cursed? Is he just simply burdened by the shirt? Does he not have enough competition? And that kind of leads me on to Bulos. It does look like and Beto da Silva will get called up for March, which means along with Farfan and maybe Jordi Reina as well, it depends, there's going to be added competition up front, which might be able to help in a lot of ways. But I think what you said about Copa America and focusing on that, Brian, I think that's going to be Gareca's focus now. From March onwards, obviously, with maybe a couple of pre-tournament friendlies on top of that, they're going to want to put it all in for Copa America, see what they can do there, and then once again prepare for the qualifiers Of course, a long qualifying campaign, and then see what happens. The thing is, though, with Ruiz, there were signs, yet again, that he had a decent enough contribution. I mean, he was the one who filtered the ball out to Aldo Corso for Edison Flores' goal. And if Flores wasn't actually there, Ruiz might have actually gotten onto that cross from Corso and might have actually had a shot on target. So there was that. The chance he had that was saved in close, that was very similar to what happened to Paolo against France. Remember that chance where he kind of turned around, I believe it was Samuel Umtiti, and he shot it, but Yori went down and made the save. Very similar to that one. The difference is Ruiz had 3 defenders around him and really had no angle to shoot it at. He only had one real place to place that, and it just so happened the goalkeeper had it covered. So I'm not as down on him as I think others are, because at the end of the day, on the international stage, it's so compact. You have such a small sample size to be able to impress. But then on the other hand, I do see where you kind of have to start moving on now and looking at, okay, this isn't necessarily getting the results in terms of the goals. We need to look elsewhere now. But I will say, though, a lot of chances that Peru generated were with the ball coming in low or at mid-height. Because every time Miguel Trauco crossed it in, I wanted to throw my phone through the TV. Because I'm thinking, you have a 5'6" and 5'7" striker going up against 6'5" Kendall Waston and 6'3" Giancarlo Gonzalez. Why are you crossing it repeatedly to these short strikers? But anyways, I digress. I'll get into a whole thing. I would like to see Bulos, especially if he can start next season strongly as well with Municipal. So I am looking forward to that. Aquino, I think you said it there. I kind of broke down his performance in my article that I just put up a couple hours ago. And it was very similar to what happened against France. He just got completely overrun, and he was far too eager to roam from his position, which I think allowed Joel Campbell to kind of go around him at times, as well as Alan Ruiz, I believe it was, on a couple of counterattacks as well. So that's something he has to work on. He has to kind of stay a little bit more disciplined with his positioning, which I think Renato Tapia is very good at. But again, Aquino's still young. He can maybe figure that out, especially as he gets more minutes with Leon. And I think that's pretty much it. I think that in terms of, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit later, Brian, but at the end of the day, you try out players who weren't necessarily regular starters before the World Cup, you're going to see these kinds of performances, right? Aldo Corso, I believe, hadn't started a game in more than a year. I think since the first leg against New Zealand was the last time he started for Peru. You throw in the fact that he isn't completely used to playing with Araujo and definitely not Santa Maria. That kind of contributed to it, along with, I think, Pedro Aquino as well. So all that put together, I think you maybe saw the fact that Costa Rica were able to capitalize on a couple of chances. Because they only had 7 shots. Peru had 17. So kind of goes to show you how much Peru controlled the match. They just got punished on a couple of occasions.
Yeah. Now, let's go to the attacking midfield. I have nothing else to say about the midfield and the forwards. Now, the first thing I want to do is, for all those Edison Flores haters, he is untouchable. Get that clear right now. Because without Edison Flores, sure, it might not impact the match a lot, but without him and Paulo Guerrero, you lose 25 goals. Well, 26 now that he scored a goal yesterday. He is one of the only consistent goal scorers on the team. I mean, sure, you got a Vincula getting a goal every so often. Sure, you get maybe not Cueva, but sure you get him and Carrillo every so often. But the only one who's really consistently scoring them is Flores. He got 5 or 6 goals in the qualifier. I think that's 5 actually. He's got 5 goals in the qualifiers. He's already one of the top 15 goal scorers of all time. Peru has 11 goals. He's untouchable because his defense might not save the disaster that is Trauco right now, but he's defensively solid and he knows how to score. He knows how to score goals, and that's so important in football. Look at Real Madrid. And I know it's daft to compare Real Madrid right now, but look at them. They lost Ronaldo, who is one of their goal scorers, their top goal scorer, and now they're full of supporting players, but no goal scorer. That is the problem with Real Madrid. Now you gotta take off Flores. Who's the most consistent goal scorer in Peru? Carrillo. He's not. He doesn't score that many though. So I mean, you lost Guerrero to suspension. That's already a lot of goals lost. That's already a lot of link-up play lost. And you lose Flores, and you lose 11 more goals. So let's just get that clear that he is untouchable from the starting lineup. If Marcos Lopez can show something next year that he doesn't have, then I'll be impressed because Marcos Lopez is great, but right now I think Flores needs to stay in the lineup at least until we find another consistent goal scorer, which should be the 9 I mentioned. Hopefully it's Olivares because I think Lopez has more potential to be better than Flores, but we gotta see who scores more for the national team because it is kind of ironic. Lopez scored a lot of goals for Cristal, whereas Flores didn't score that many for La U. He actually missed more chances than he scored. He was kind of a Germán Alemano 2.0, just without as many bloopers. So Flores wasn't very good for La U until his last season, if I recall. At least on his second spell. Not so much his first one. His first one, there's a reason he wanted to be at Real. Well, anyways, so let's get that clear that Flores is untouchable. He has to stay on that left side. Whether people don't like that he impacts the game as much or his counters are slow now, but he is so important. He's so pivotal to this side in every way. Now, as for the 10, Cueva is still the missing link, but I think we have a good backup for him now. I think Benavente has proven something. I don't think he was great against Costa Rica, but I think he was definitely good enough. He was definitely signed to a lot of critics. One of the best players for Peru of the match. And I think that he can develop from here. I think that's the sort of performance he needs to show. And it just like I said, he needed a full game to play. I don't remember if he was subbed out, but he played at least 70 minutes. This is as far as I know. And that's really what he needed because giving him 15 minutes just to come in and just have some luck with his chances wasn't really fair on him. Now that he's played almost a full game, if not a full game, he has been able to prove himself and he can stay in the squad now. So that's good for him. And Peter, what do you think of these two players before I move on to Carrillo, which is the doozy?
Well, I was always on the bandwagon with you about Flores. Remember when people were kind of criticizing him pre-World Cup and obviously during the World Cup? And he deserved the criticism during the World Cup. You could see he was overawed by the occasion. But, I feel like after the high of highs in 2017, people, and this is classic South America, that they completely ripped him apart for 2 or 3 kind of invisible showings, which I think was very unfair, especially given his club situation at the time. But now you're seeing what a confident Edison Flores is capable of. Look at what he did against the U.S. Even against Chile. I know he wasn't maybe as lively as he was against the U.S., but still very good in that game. And then I would say, even though there weren't very many bright spots against Ecuador, still did pretty decently well, it must be said. And then obviously this recent match against Costa Rica too, he was excellent. And I love the fact too, Brian, that he is now not afraid to kind of roam centrally. You notice that a lot of times he kind of occupies that left half space a lot more now, which I love to see because he's doing that with Monarcas. He actually, at times when he came off on the pitch as a substitute, he would sometimes be deployed as kind of like, I almost want to say it, almost like a Yotun-style left-sided midfielder in a lot of ways, but maybe more, obviously wing-oriented, I guess. And that's great to see because I think he's thriving off of that because he gets time centrally. That means he gets more shots off. And guess what? One of those could end up going in because we all know that he's capable of scoring from distance, probably better than any Peruvian player. Certainly any of these starting players. And then Benavente, look, even though Rui Diaz did not get his goal, seeing Benavente doing well, setting up chances, getting in behind the Costa Rican defense, stretching it, it was great to see. And you consider the fact that he's Spanish-born, he was raised in Spain, he's not at all used to the altitude, none whatsoever. And he goes to Arequipa and he delivers that sort of a performance. I think you have to almost multiply that by 5. In terms of the plaudits he's getting, because obviously very tough conditions for him to cope with, and he did just fine. I think that in the first half, he kind of drifted in and out of the game a lot. Second half was a lot more consistent. I love the fact that he was one of the few Peruvian players who I think maybe outside of Flores, who was making very intelligent runs off the ball. Like as soon as Aldo Corso on the right would have it, Benavente would see a little bit of a space kind of down that left side, and then boom, he'd run into it immediately and exploit it. It was great to see. And I think that that's something that he can really provide if Gareca ever wanted it. So 2 very good performances from them in this game. And it's great to see, especially Benavente, taking that chance, because I think now, at least for the near future, he's earned a spot in that squad.
Yeah, at least in the squad for sure. But I still think Cueva right now has to be the starter.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he's the flair Cueva offers, there's very few that can offer them. I said Quevedo last month. Yeah, Quevedo offers that flair, but he's not as good as Cueva, obviously, and he doesn't even play in the same position. But that's the kind of style that really fits his team. And I think Cueva for now has to be the starter, but Benavente is a fair enough backup for sure. Now, as for the right wing, this is kind of a doozy because I said something on Twitter and a few friends the other day, including the WhatsApp group, the Peruvian Waltz, that Polo needs to be the starter over Carrillo. And I stand by that because at least until we find out the club situations, Carrillo has made a massive mistake in going to Saudi Arabia. I mean, yeah, it's not the worst Arabic league there is. I mean, it's definitely the best league in the Middle East. Maybe competing with. Well, I don't know if you consider Egypt part of the Middle East, but in the Arabic world, it's probably the best league. Between them, Egypt, and not Algeria, Morocco. Those 3 are definitely the ones competing. And Iran, but again, I don't know if you consider Iran Middle East. So that's all. It's all semantics. So I think that Carrillo, the problem with Carrillo is that he's not getting a ton of playing time at Al Hilal. He's getting some playing time. I mean, he started a bit late, partly because of an injury. So it might be that he's still recovering from an injury or whatnot, but let's be fair, he's been awful since the World Cup. Since the World Cup, he had 15 minutes of glory against the Netherlands and then became a ghost. Against Germany, he didn't play. He was not very lively against Chile. I mean, he got a good cross in for the first goal, but otherwise he didn't really do much. And against Ecuador, he was terrible. Against the U.S., he didn't play either. Well, he played for a few minutes, but that was 2 minutes, if I remember correctly. And against Ecuador, he showed strength, but he wasn't that good. And I think Polo, he's improved a lot. He used to be the king of back passes. Now he actually goes forward. He actually shows off the talent he actually has. I still have questions about his consistency, and he still uses strength a bit more like Carrillo and Flores does, but that's all something that will improve with time. Now, Polo has been really good against the U.S. and against Costa Rica. Sorry about that. About Costa Rica, Polo has been good against those two, against the 2 CONCACAF sides. Against the U.S., you maybe could let it slide because it was against a very young USA side. But this Costa Rica team are no mugs, so you can't really. They just beat Chile and Peru 3-2 away, both in altitude. So you can't really write them off in anything because they're quite a good side. Let's if we're being totally fair. I think that Apollo needs to start for now, just because Carrillo's not in form. And these are the sort of decisions that can win you games. Like we say in Spanish, el que no arriesga no gana. You really need to think about how Gareca took a big risk. Let me put it this way, okay? Would you have dropped the Cuatro Fantásticos at the Copa America 2016? Do you think there was anyone? Do you think there was anyone better? I mean, these decisions, these bold moves are the ones that win you games. Because, I mean, I would rather have a player that's performing over a player that is better objectively. I mean, sure, Carrillo is much better than Polo in every single way, but he's not performing. I don't want a player that isn't performing on the starting 11. It's not simple. And these friendlies are the experiment. Polo is doing well, and I don't want to see a player that didn't perform in these friendlies in the starting 11. Then what was the point of experimenting? It doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why I think Polo should go over Carrillo. Now, I don't think that it's a perfect decision because Polo still has a lot of issues with his defense, as we saw in the second goal for the second Costa Rican goal, where him and Corso were completely missing from the right side, and Carrillo does a better defense with him. But the thing I see is we have to give him time because if you think about it, Flores and Carrillo also didn't have very high work rate in the when they first came in the national team. Actually, Carrillo took him several years to get it right. And Flores, once he went to Europe, he seemed to change a lot. So But Polo's younger than Carrillo, and I think he still has a lot of time. But we gotta give him the patience for him to work. So that way we have a proper backup. And Gabriel Costa could be another option in March when he's eligible. So I think the right wing is okay, but we really need for now if we have a competitive match tomorrow, I would put Polo in personally, and that's just my opinion because a lot of people have told me it's a silly decision because Carrillo's much better in Polo, but that's like I'm trying to think of an example. That's like saying that Advíncula is better in Corso, but he's playing terribly and Corso's playing better. Who would you have in? I would have Corso in if he's playing better. Just because if Advíncula is doing terribly, and I'm not saying he is, I'm just using an example. If he's not disciplined enough, then if he's not serious enough, then I would have the other player in. That's what got Corso in for the longest time. I mean, it's these bold decisions that really win you games. I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but it's the truth. I don't have anything against Carrillo. I just think that he needs to find a better club and perform better for the national team. Well, some people, before you say anything, Peter, some people have told me that Polo plays in the MLS. It's not that great. It doesn't get competition. Okay, but if you think about it, Carrillo plays in the Arabic League, which is the MLS, but with worse local players. So that's my argument to you. Like it's not a very good argument because Polo plays in a better league than Carrillo. I'm sorry to say that, but he does.
Oh man. Well, look, first of all, I mean, Gareca made a bold decision in this window. He dropped Christian Cueva, right? And no one ever thought that would happen. No matter what his club situation was, no matter how poorly he was playing or indisciplined, whatever, he did it. So there's one example of Gareca making a bold choice. So he's definitely not afraid to do it. As you mentioned, dropped the Cuatro Fantásticos and brought in a new generation. No one in their wildest dreams would have thought that would happen. But guess what? They made a World Cup 2 years later. So it clearly worked out. It's not the worst take because, as you mentioned, Polo in his 2 games has done more than Andre Carrillo has really since Russia. So, and on top of that, he's making better decisions. And when was the last time you could say about Andy Polo, he's a better decision maker in the final third under pressure than Andre Carrillo? It's never happened.
Yeah,
so,
it's mental. It's mental. He would have just made a back pass in the past.
Exactly. Whereas Carrillo at least would have taken it forward. But Polo's recognizing runs, overlapping or just to the side of him, whatever. It's great. And he makes the right decision quickly every single time.
I want to interrupt you for a second, Peter, but I also wanted to mention, keep that thought, maintain that thought, but I also wanted to mention that Carrillo at Polo's age was absolutely terrible. I remember in his the last bit of the 2014 qualifiers, he was a laughingstock. He was really bad. The only reason he was called up was because he was playing in Portugal, so he clearly had something. But his crosses would always go outside the stadium into the palcos. It would be that high, and his runs were predictable. So he was terrible. So it's not like Carrillo has not been down this route before.
Well, and here's the other thing too, though. You mentioned the defending. It's not like Carrillo tracks back and defends either. So
he does more in Polo, to be fair.
Yeah, but it's not that much different, right? I mean, Polo can learn it. Really, you're not losing much if you're swapping them in and out, at least defensively, especially if you have Advíncula there, who will obviously run back and forth all game long. Although he'll still need support, but I digress. But after you mentioned the take to us in the WhatsApp chat and basically broke it, I was thinking to myself, okay, yes, Carrillo's in Saudi Arabia. He obviously has more time because he has the quality to be able to get around the average defender, so he won't have to look for those runs all the time. And then when he goes up against better defenses, they'll obviously be able to telegraph his move. But then at the same time, isn't this just classic Andre Carrillo? Like he goes in and out of form. It ebbs and flows. A couple games in a row, you'll see him just kind of dominating defenses, and then the next game, completely invisible. So it's really not that much different. That being said, it also bolsters the argument. This is why Andy Polo should start. I don't know if Gareca will do it because, again, a lot depends on the club situation. If Andy Polo stays in MLS, or he goes back to Monarcas and ends up getting a starting spot there, which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Him and Flores on either flank, that would be kind of nice. we don't know what the situation is going to be, but I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility if the club situation for Polo stays the same and he comes into March. I mean, mind you, the season will have just started in MLS if he stays, but if he can prove in training to Gareca that I am worthy of another starting spot and ends up having another great game, the conversation absolutely has to be had, maybe even heading into Copa America as well, that Andy Polo should be the starter.
Andy Polo was actually quite good in the last Copa America too. He made that cross for Ruidíaz's infamous handball against Brazil.
Oh yeah, that's
and he
right.
was actually pretty good in that game as well. If I remember correctly, he came on as a sub, and he actually did it quite well. He was making a lot of runs into the box, and Polo was very hit and miss. But now he's starting to gain a bit of consistency. I still have a few questions because I haven't followed Portland in depth, but the few games I did see, I was impressed. Now, I also wanted to mention that or repeat, better said, that these friendlies are used to experiment. It's not used to play. It's not used to play the starting 11 after you play the friendlies and then lose a game. Like I said, I prefer to win. I prefer to win games. And if we're going to keep playing the starters and lose games, then we got to make these risks because that's what the friendlies are for. They're not simply exhibition games. They're for experiments as well. I mean, friendlies sometimes doesn't give the full, or the name doesn't give the full explanation of what it actually is. Because I mean, they're not competitive matches. Yeah, they're not fierce. Well, it depends on who you ask. If you ask Ecuador, he can tell you it's fierce. That was disgusting mentality in the on the other day. But anyways, no, it really is for just trying out players, at least at international level. I think at club level is a completely different story, but international level, they're taken more seriously, and they're more like your one chance to try players because you don't really have another shot. Whereas at club level, you can do friendlies whenever you want, like midweek, just as long as it's not coinciding with the regular match or during international break. You have a lot more time to experiment. International break. I mean, this is the year with the most friendly. A World Cup year is the year with the most friendlies in a year. Otherwise, you have like 2 or up to 4 friendlies max. So you gotta really think about that. Polo over Carrillo, controversial opinion, but I'm only saying it for now until Carrillo sorts the situation out because you're right that Carrillo is a bit hit and miss sometimes, but when he is. Well, I don't want to say when he is playing, but better said when I think that when he does perform, then he's definitely the starting option no matter what. But at the same time, if he doesn't perform, then we can't miss the opportunity to drop him. Like some people in Argentina said, drop Messi because he's carrying the team. But at the same time, it could be the problem because it might have a bad mentality around the group, and now Argentina are doing better without him. So it's a controversial decision, but it might be the right one. And don't ask me about that Messi thing. It's I have a long rant about that, but that's not what this pod is about. So let's talk about the last bit. Peter, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I wanted to reiterate though that I'm 100% with you. When you come off a major tournament or you've made some progress, which Peru has, it's time to evolve and improve, right? And part of doing that is bringing in new players. As I mentioned off the top, that Costa Rica game, I think that was a symptom of bringing in new players into the team who aren't quite familiar with each other. We saw that against the U.S. as well, but in the U.S.'s case, they also were bringing in new players and had a bunch of young guys with no coach. So therefore, they were kind of in the same boat, which is, I think, why you ended up seeing a tie. Compare that to Costa Rica, who I believe had, and I did talk to some Costa Rican fans about this, 7 or 8 of their starters were on that pitch. Whereas I think Peru, in terms of if you look back to their World Cup 11, it was like, I think 5, 6 at most. So that makes a bit of a difference, right? But fans who wanted Gareca to experiment and to throw in these players are now saying, well, how come we're losing? Well, why is this happening? Why are we conceding goals? Well, that's why. It takes time to get chemistry together. And part of that is eventually you're going to get on the same wavelength. Look at Aquino and Yotun against France. They were way, way off the same page, or way off the they weren't even in the same book, really. Like, they were so out of sync. And then you see that as they kind of get a couple more games together, the chemistry's there. The synchronized movements are in place, and you see that something builds. And that's what Peruvians need. And this is why I think having Ricardo Gareca, someone who was so level-headed despite all the hysteria in Peru and the overreaction, we are thankful to have him, because he's not going to be afraid to do stuff. He's going to keep sticking to his plan, and he's going to make sure that the team improves from here. And honestly, amen.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go on to the defense now. The last bit. We're not going to be talking about goalkeepers because, we have a lot of options. And despite Galese performing kind of poorly in recent matches as of late, in my opinion, I mean, it's a friendly. I'm sure he's not taking him seriously, and I'm not really worried about the situation. So, Galese is definitely number one for a few years to come. At least for this cycle anyways, definitely going to be number one still. So, now let's talk about the defense. The defense is definitely worrying, especially that left side, because this Trauco's has been a disaster as of late, and Loyola is not really a better option at all. So, I don't think Santillan or Vasquez would do it either. I mean, Santillan he's not even a left back anymore, and Vasquez is way too slow for defending. So I don't think and he's not as good offensively as Trauco. So the situation is not really better. So, Trauco, it's kind of goes without saying he's been awful. Anyone who's seen the match, it seems to be like a general agreed opinion now. And I'm not too worried about the right flank or the right back anyways, because I mean, Corso was awful, but he had his flashes of good quality in the Costa Rica match. How he got the assist. He got the assist for the first goal. So I'm not too worried about Corso. I mean, he's had a poor year. But it's been a while since he played for the national team, as Peter mentioned, and I think that he definitely transforms when he plays for us. He definitely knows what it is to play. He definitely knows la piel de la blanquirroja. So I think that Corso is going to be the backup, and I think that enough of this Johan Madrid nonsense. Johan Madrid has been good for months, so I think Corso has to be the backup. And Luis Advíncula, it's concerning his performances, but at least he's getting planked up for Rayo Vallecano and whatnot. He's been linked to Atletico Madrid. I think the problem with Luis Advíncula is that here in Peru, people are making him out to be the best right back in the world. And hey, he might be the best right back in the world, but we don't know that yet. He can't prove that yet because he's not a big enough club. So, I mean, even if he does have the talent, like if he does go to Atletico Madrid and he does perform at the level that people are telling him to be at, we could say we set this at Rayo Vallecano. And maybe it's true, but like a Rayo Vallecano, you can't exactly prove that. So at Dybala, you can prove that he was one of the best players in the world when he was at Palermo. It wasn't until Juve where he really proved that, I don't want to say a higher level because you're playing in the same league, but I guess the Champions League or doing consistently for a big team and making yourself a higher profile, which doesn't always matter, but I think in this case it does because it's not easy to say a Rayo Vallecano right back is the best right back in the world. And as for my opinion on that, I don't want to say he's the best right back in the world. I want to reserve judgment. I think he has fantastic talent. He's the fastest player in the world, but I really want to reserve my judgment on that because I don't want to say a Rayo Vallecano player is the best right back in the world. So I think that's one of the issues. I think the mentality has been a bit inflated. His ego has been a bit inflated because, like I said, they're making him out to be the best right back in the world, and we just don't know that in reality. So that might be one of the issues. I can't think of any other reason to explain his poor form because he seems a bit overly confident in some situations. Like Ecuador's first goal, he seemed very confident that a tackle would go through, and it just didn't. And that led to Antonio Valencia's first. And as for the center backs, I think Araujo and Abraham definitely have to be the two center backs. Abraham was fantastic against Ecuador. He's the lone bright spot. Araujo was okay. He had a few errors, but that's literally his first time I've seen him play a 5 or 6 game out of 10 for Peru. Every other time it's been a 9 or a 10. So that's literally the first time, and I think that it's not time to panic with him yet. Santa Maria, on the other hand, he was average against Costa Rica. They didn't really do anything wrong, which is good because he's been quite good for Peru, but the club situation is concerning, for sure. And I definitely think that Puebla, he's not getting along well. I hope he finds a new club. And he was terrible for Puebla in his last few matches, so it does make sense that he was dropped. But I think that the whole Mudo Rodriguez talk. I mean, we are transitioning past him, but it didn't need to happen. As obvious as that sounds, we were performing without Mudo at one point, just like we were performing without Paolo at one point. The difference with Paolo is that we're using Farfan, who is just the same age, but with Mudo Rodriguez, I think with Santa Maria solved some issues, but the difference is Santa Maria was getting game time back then. Now he isn't. So we're going to have to get used to this. But I think the defense, the left flank is really the only place that really, really concerns me. So, Peter, what do you think of all I just said?
Well, I mean, we had a question that kind of sort of sets up my general answer to the defensive problems. Luis Awayo at El Awayo 98 asked us, it looks like our defense regressed in these last two friendlies. He adds 5 goals conceded. Why do you think that was? Was it any individual player? Was it communication in the back? Lack of playing together? And then he also asked us a follow-up, which I think we'll get to at the end of this. It's basically who would we have as our starting back four moving forward. I think the last, I'd say 2 points that he made in terms of the communication and lack of playing together, it goes hand in hand. As I mentioned off the top, when you don't have a group of players playing together, you end up seeing kind of what you saw against Costa Rica and Ecuador. The defense is wide open. The midfield gets overrun. You know, players making basic mistakes like Pedro Aquino, instead of trying to just simply close down Joel Campbell, tries to kind of outmuscle him, which is a terrible mistake to make. And then Miguel Trauco giving Jonathan McDonald too much space at the top of the box. You have to get tighter to him, close him down. Otherwise, he's going to have that lane to shoot, and he got it. So, and then, of course, just simply ball watching on that second goal. Aldo Corso not picking up the runner at the back post. It's all those little things that kind of add up, and that's because of a lack of communication and a lack of playing together. So I don't think it's anything overly concerning at the moment, at least. When you look at the first couple games against the Netherlands and Germany, the first two friendlies after the World Cup, those are quality teams. They're going to put away their chances regardless. Against Chile, we saw a massive improvement in that regard. Not so much against the United States, but again, experimental backline. So again, same symptoms. Ecuador, for the first half, they were pretty solid, and then it just kind of fell apart in the second half when they tried to push forward and get the goal, and there was absolutely no midfield to be found. So I think just in general, we shouldn't be too overly concerned right now, because when you look at Peru's expected goals allowed from the World Cup qualifiers, and to those who don't know, again, expected goals is an advanced analytic that is used to determine the quality of a shot based on shot location, whether it was a header, your dominant foot, what have you. So Peru's expected goals allowed from the World Cup qualifiers was, I believe it was around 23.7 expected goals allowed. They actually ended up conceding 26 goals. So they were unlucky to basically concede more goals than what they should have. You look at the friendlies, they have conceded in and around, I think this was before the Costa Rica game, but they conceded 7 goals before the Costa Rica game, dating back from the Netherlands game to Thursday night. I want to say it was like 6.7 expected goals, something like that. Well, again, that's right in line, right? So this is very solvable in that they just have to cut down the mistakes, and that comes with communication and playing together. So all in all, I'm not too concerned. If it happens in March again, then maybe you have the conversation a little bit more seriously. But as for now, I don't know. So, Brian, I'll pose the question to you. Who would you have as your starting back four moving forward here? I know you mentioned Abraham, which I kind of agree with on that, but who would be the back four from left to right?
First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, I had to change my mic while you were talking, Peter, because my quality is going to be a lot worse. My Blue Snowball just decided to randomly stop working in the middle of the pod. So I'm going to have to go with this for the rest of the pod. So the quality is going to be really crappy. Just bear with me. But yeah, as to answer the question, Trauco, Abraham, Araujo, and Arvincula. I think that's the right lineup. Trauco, yeah, he's been atrocious, but there's really no one better. And unfortunately, he's the best option. He's kind of irreplaceable at the moment. And yeah, it's we really gotta go with those four. I think Arvincula is is not going anywhere because he is a very good right back, international level. And Araujo and Abraham have been very good in their clubs, and they've been very good for Peru. So,
Yep.
I definitely think that that they're the right players.
Yep.
Now, as for the I guess to end the pod, we could just talk about one more thing. Well, first of all, I want to talk about Cristian Ramos.
Well, we have another question. So
I thought we had only one. Okay, go ahead.
We do have another question. It kind of plays into that as well. I'll just ask you as well, Brian. So Dan at young_dad asking, is it time to move away from the 4-2-3-1?
No, I think we're fine with the 4-2-3-1. I don't really think about any other formations. I think that Tapia and Aquino have to rotate, so I don't really like the three midfield idea. And I don't know. Maybe just the fact that I just can't see this working in another way. But it might be possible. If you want to play two forwards, then you might be able to get Ruiz to work. But then you're also jeopardizing other positions. So that's kind of a difficult one. What do you think, Peter?
No, I think you should stick with it, really. I mean, it worked well before. Why can't it work now? You just got to get the new players in and work out the kinks, and then eventually something will form. I maybe wonder if like a 4-4-2, like you mentioned, maybe playing with two strikers, it's not too different from what they normally do. Like they were doing that for a time whenever Benavente would kind of partner with Rui Diaz, and it worked well. So maybe that's a possibility. But again, formations ebb and flow, and they change constantly throughout games. Just because they line up in a 4-2-3-1 at kickoff doesn't mean like they stay in those exact positions the entire 90 minutes. So it does fluctuate. But maybe slight tweaks to it could end up working. But in terms of the general formation, no, I don't think it needs to change.
I think I'm happy with what we have now. But anyways, like I was saying about Cristian Ramos, I'm kind of undecided with him. I want him to stay in the squad, just to have like a veteran player, because without him, I take him out and him and Farfan are the only two. Farfan has to stay for at least another year. Ramos, I think it's good to have a veteran defender because veteran defenders are better. But I wouldn't have him starting. He's not been very good since the World Cup. So going back to the Ramos of old times. So I guess we can end the pod with one more thing, and this is something we really wanted Christopher for. But the Copa Peru Finalissima is actually coming up. We have 4 teams: Alianza Universidad de Huánuco, UDA from Huancavelica, which is Unión Deportivo Ascensión, the infamous Molinos El Pirata, which I want to spend the last few minutes talking about, and Santos FC from Nazca. Now, those are the 4 teams. The team that finishes first goes up to Primera División automatically, and the team that finishes second and third goes to the playoff with the second and third of the Segunda División. So the top 2 up goes up there. So a lot of people don't seem to have it clear, but that's how it works. Now, as for Molinos El Pirata, it is what a club they are. Like actually, what a club they are. They put out a poll or a contest on them to decide their new logo, which to begin with, for a club that might become professional next year, that's ridiculous. Like you don't do a democracy with people. I mean, they can easily steal images and you're not aware of it. So that's ridiculous to begin with. And secondly, some of the suggestions are absolutely hilarious. Like it just spawned meme after meme. One of them I saw, one of my favorite ones was it was Molinos El Pirata, and instead of Jack Sparrow, it had Patchy the Pirate from SpongeBob. That's the best one I've seen so far. And to keep this a non-explicit podcast, I'm not going to say their catchphrase, but it's basically hashtag Vamos FUCK. I'm not going to say that out loud because I kind of want to keep this podcast swear free. But that's basically their catchphrase. It's probably poorly translated, but I think I know what they're trying to say. But yeah, it is hilarious. But that's going to be the end of the pod. My name is Brian Birdie, and I'm B_Bertie98. Hope you enjoyed, or I'm B_Bertie98 on Twitter, better said. Hope you enjoyed. Peter, what is yours and what is the Waltz?
Yes, you can follow me at Galindo PW, follow the Peruvian Waltz at Peru Waltz, and subscribe to us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, and hashtag Vamos FUCK.
Good, you didn't say it. Okay, well, yeah, that's going to be the Peruvian Waltz team, and we're signing off.